Awesome, mate. So we're going to do another on-com check-in. We did the last one at the end of November. I think a lot has happened, Keegan. I think a good place to start, mate, would be last time we talked, you were a father of two. Now you're a father of three. You want to explain the experience, maybe, or what's maybe come up and changed since then?
Yeah. So as any father knows, it's a big thing when the baby comes. But having 7 years between the second and the third, it feels a little bit like the first again. It was a bit of a new experience in some ways, but also interesting to have the other two children present. We had a home birth again, so the children are both present and you know ready to experience whatever's going to happen. And then it turned out that the birth was much more challenging than the previous two. So the children witnessed quite a challenging birth, which I think is, time will tell. It's a tough thing for children to see. It's a tough thing for a husband and for a wife and for a baby. And for the midwives that were here, and we had a doctor on standby. And in the end, the little man is doing well. But it was a very, very intense day, probably the most intense experience of my life so far. And just, really happy for having him here with us. And a lot of the thinking that I was doing going into the birth, I was thinking a lot about play and about presence and about learning from a man named Joseph Chilton Pearce. And Joseph Chilton Pearce had a number of mystical experiences. He was a father of five, but he had a number of mystical experiences, including conversations with Jesus and putting cigarettes on his skin and it not burning. And he was having these experiences that you're not meant to be able to have. And then he wrote a bunch of books about how and why and what we might be missing about the true nature of a man and what the brain is really capable of. So I was reading these sorts of materials, and then I had the toughest day of my life 2 weeks after I started to read those materials. And I'm very grateful for being in that frame of mind, because if I'm honest, a lot of the last 10 years since I've been in business, I've been deep in business, and I've been thinking about what needs to happen today, conversations, content, delivering value to the people that I'm working with. And had I been half in that brain and half in the brain of dealing with the situation at hand, I don't know what would have happened, because my wife was very stressed and challenged by the position that we're in. And we're in Mexico, and we're facing going to the hospital, and we're up 2 flights of stairs where we were. And, just the idea of everything that would have gone ahead after if we'd have gone to the hospital. So, it was a big, big experience. And now we have another young being with us that's going on his journey. And you see him changing day after day, week after week. It's good to see that journey again. We're all capable of significant change week to week, month to month, as much as it doesn't feel like it. We expect it of the baby. It's been an interesting last 6 weeks through those experiences.
Yeah, man. Well, first of all, I'm glad everyone's okay. I think that's the big one. And then, has this changed you more than the previous births, like the previous kids arriving, or has anything changed or switched in any way?
Yeah, there's definitely been some evolution going on in how I look at business and life and the journey I want to guide men along, because I've been guiding men to become more athletic and win in sports really for the last 30 years. It's been my obsession since early in primary school. And all I wanted to learn about in high school was how to improve the nutrition and how to improve the performance. And that was my best subject in high school. So the shift of, well, maybe winning isn't going to get them to the results that they could have. Maybe winning is even slightly in the way of getting to the results that they might want to have. And this is the perspective of the Chilton Pearce stuff and the whole brain development, is that when you're in a competitive mind, you can't be as creative. You can't learn as much. There's more anxiety. It's quite deep. And so it is quite a big paradigm shift for someone who's, from my earliest memories, been about competing and keeping up with my older brother and winning against my schoolmates and whatnot. It does feel like quite a shift, but that's exciting. And I think it's good to go through these evolutions and question again what it is that you do and how you do it. Fundamentally, it's still quite similar. I'm still training each day, and I'm still thinking about how to develop the body as one of the foundational pillars. But the energy behind it sometimes feels really different, and sometimes feels pretty similar to before. When you're changing a habit, with habit change and shift and personal image shift, you sort of oscillate between it. It can cause some degree of crisis or uncertainty as well as you have those shifts. So yeah, these are the conversations that I'm having with myself and with other men in Uncommon Success of what does success really look like, and how do we get there?
Yeah, as you were talking there, it kind of reminds me of the Infinite Game. I can't remember who.
Simon Sinek, yeah.
Simon Sinek, yeah. Because if you're just in that frame of mind, then losing's okay, and you're just focusing on the play and the action of developing whatever it is you want to get better at. So is that kind of where you're coming from? Like just bringing play into everything?
Yeah, it's a great book. I highly recommend it. I listened to it a few years ago, and 100%. If you're thinking about making better men, which has been the primary journey that I've been on, is guiding men to a position in life that they'd rather be in than the one they're currently in, and seeing them make more money, have better bodies, be able to travel, be able to have conversations they couldn't have, be more proud of what they're doing. If that's the journey, you can't win. So recognizing, well, this is never going to be finished. All men aren't going to be living to their potential. I can't live to my potential. Like there's infinite potential, and then there's always going to be people who don't want to go on that journey or aren't ready for it yet or such. So yeah, recognizing that there is no winning is an important part of the journey. But one of the stories that hit me, that stuck with me from this content, was 7-year-olds playing basketball. And this man had gone along to watch the 7-year-olds play basketball. I think his nephew was playing, and he became the scorer. And so he was scoring the game. He's watching his team play, and they're winning by a lot. The other team's barely touching the ball, and they're scoring lots of baskets, and come off, and the children are like, "Oh, what's the score? What's the score?" He's the scoreboard man, so he tells them the score. And it was like 39-6 or something. It was ridiculous. And they're like, "Oh, who's winning?" And the point was that they don't care at that age. They're just playing the game. They're having fun, and they don't know what the score is. And so this is a shift. And I get it with my son. Now I'm able to see it with him, because he hasn't grown up in that competitive environment of having an older brother and going to sporting games every weekend. They went to watch their uncle's rugby team play in Leeds. And it's quite a foreign thing to them. We went and watched a Premier League soccer game with my father just on TV here in Mexico. And they're just not used to seeing that battle for winning goals. And like the questions that they ask are really interesting, because they're seeing it from completely different eyes of not having this paradigm of competing. And so, yeah, then they astound me with their creativity. Yesterday, have you ever had a go at making balloon dogs or balloon animals with those long sort of sausage balloons?
Yeah.
Did you have some wins, or how did you go with it?
I used to work at a summer camp with kids years ago, and I was like 16, 17. So we were doing that. To be honest, I can't remember.
Yeah, you would have been all right if you did it over and over. But I remember trying it a couple of times, just having those long balloons. Maybe other men, fathers can empathize with this. It just doesn't quite work. They just keep coming undone, or it pops, and it's not going to plan. So I'd tried with these sausage balloons a few times in my life. It was one of those things like juggling and handstands where you play around. You're just like, well, guitar, not sure this is for me. I don't think I can do it. And so they came home with a bunch of these balloons. There's one here on the table. It's my father's 70th today. So we prepared for the party, right? And I'm like, all right, let's have a go at this. So we start doing the dogs, and we're watching videos on YouTube. We make the dogs, and I was like, oh, great. I finally made a balloon dog at 40. My life is complete. 41 now. And so then I go about my next things and whatnot, come back, Maya's made this shield pretzel thing and this sword with bubbles on it. There's like infinitely more ornate than anything we saw on YouTube. And then Manu's got this little gun that he's made. I was like, did you find that on YouTube? And he's like, no, I just made it. And I was like, all right. So
The boy makes a gun.
Yeah. He made a gun and she made a shield and a sword. But I couldn't make it. I couldn't get it to work when I wanted to have a go at it through my competitive, outcome-driven brain. In my teens and 20s when I played around with the balloons, where they're still in single digits and they're just playing around and they solve it and they don't have any real anxiety about it. And I see them do this with stuff where they just persist and persist because they are playing, but they're playing without a scoreboard in a way. And it is a very, very challenging concept because I've been fully attached to the scoreboard all my life. And it's difficult in a time where a lot of men are apathetic. The scoreboard is a win. To compete is a win because at least you're not apathetic. At least you're playing the game, and to be competitive, even to be angry, is above apathy on the scale of consciousness, the David Hawkins stuff, right? So in some ways it's like, okay, this is good. But then maybe there's a lot more above the competitiveness. And you do start to see that come out a lot of times in those who create new paradigms in things. Sometimes they think it's competition as well, but they really just want to do things that haven't been done before, which is not necessarily a competitive thing. It can be more of a creative thing. So yeah, this philosophy is something that's under question for me at the moment. And I wonder how that is for yourself as well, as you've gone through these new levels and you're doing these things that you didn't think you were necessarily going to be able to do, with running the recent event, with growing your brand and your business, and you smash through all the numbers. And then does that make a crisis, or does it, do you just keep seeing what you can build?
I find I'm getting a lot of this through Latin dancing now. It's it's just play. You're having fun. And it was something I wanted to, maybe you're the same, like my entire life is like fitness and business and hobby. It's all in this one block, so, which is great. You're living your passion. But then what would happen to me in particular in the early years I'd have a bad week and that would just kill me, because that's like everything. It's like it's not just like that's my job or I've got an injury. It's like, shit, that's all of the things that I care about, like, right?
Yeah.
So what I focused on, I was thinking more recently, was trying to bring something in that I would really enjoy doing, but it wasn't really related to the business or fitness or whatever. So when I started dancing last year, that really started ticking the box. It was really hard at the start as well. And I think this would be a cool thing to go into, is that failure. I think everyone should start Latin dancing, man, because it's so hard. Because when you mess up by yourself with juggling or whatever, but when you mess up and you're in really close contact with a woman, like that's way harder, right? Because she's just like looking at you mess up. So it's even more, there's an audience, we'll say. But now I started salsa dancing 2 weeks ago. I came back to Romania. And it's just fun, man. It's so much fun, like just the music and a great activity to do in the evenings. So yeah, that's really cool. I think just having that, I think I think something we can go into today as well is maybe around mental health, because I think play and mental health are very, very connected. If your entire life is you're doing a job you hate, you're not moving, you're not succeeding, you're not having any fun, like you should be depressed, right? But I'd love to hear your thoughts on the failure side first, and then we can maybe dive into the mental health side.
Yeah, I love that you've brought that up and that you've gone on that journey, and it is so important to have multiple journeys that are going on in your life. I had that as well, where I'd get an injury and I'd be depressed for a month or 2 months, or like I just go off the rails, wouldn't want to talk to anyone because I had an injury. And I was a coach, and you're not meant to do that. You're not meant to have that. But if you're pushing the limits physically, you're challenging yourself with stuff, or even just, it can happen. Like, it's life. You need to have strategies around that. And I think for the first time in my life in 2021, I was not training well, and I was feeling good about life. And it was the first time I could remember, okay, I'm not in the best shape of my life. I'm not training that consistently. I think I barely trained for like 2-3 months during the winter in SARC, the outreach of the United Kingdom. It is really, really powerful to have that. I think there's so many elements to what you're talking about with the dancing that are important. The social interaction, the fact that it's not really competition, even though you probably can get into competitions and they can rate you and whatnot, but that's not really what it's about. And I think skill development in itself is rewarding and good for the brain, and learning new things is powerful. Being on rhythm is powerful. Being able to coordinate the positions of your feet is powerful. I was doing it here in the backyard yesterday on my own. Niels van Elsis, one of the Uncom players from Netherlands, he's really into the movement type stuff. He's got a beats scale solution that he built. So a sort of an on-ramp into working with him. Playing around with that, playing around with the ballet arms that I learned from Shane, who does ballet strength. He was in Real Movement back in the day. He's got about 80,000 followers, and he teaches ballerinas how to be stronger with. And so it's just inherently joyful, or it's at least it can be. There's still a decision to some degree. Like I can be playing with my children and getting no joy out of it, or I can be playing with my children and having the time of my life. And it's mostly a mental switch. You can say it's about presence, but I can consciously decide I'm going to have fun here. Like this is going to be the best. I'm going to fully engage with it. Or I can think about, okay, it's my turn to have the children at this time. I'm going to play with them, and then I'm going to get back to those DMs. I'm going to write that article, and I'm going to think about what I'm going to do tomorrow. It's a conscious decision. I don't know if you've had this with the dance, but do you feel like you have the ability to internally dial up or down the level of enjoyment, exhilaration / the other extreme is the anxiety or uncertainty? Like, are you able to, do you have awareness of the shift in that consciously, or what are you experiencing there?
Yeah, I think it's funny because I've done quite a lot of therapy like over the last since 2018, and dance is like a physical form of therapy. It's very interesting. So like the first 3 months, you're just anxious and you feel like an idiot. You feel like you're doing everything wrong, because you're just not good at it. But what I kind of realized was the dialogue was my dialogue, my inner critic being like, you're doing it wrong, you're an idiot, she's judging you, you look like an idiot, blah, blah, blah. Then after 3 or 4 months, I was like, I'm judging myself. No one's judging me, So that was like a big realization. So then it was like, if I'm doing this with dance, everything that I'm not good at or I feel incompetent at, that voice is coming in. So that was a really good awareness practice, going through that process. And then when it comes up in other areas, I'm like, oh yeah, that's just that part of me coming in, and that's okay. Like he always jumps in to tell me this. And then when I really started seeing the benefits of it, it was like I would be really tired going to a dance class, and then I'd be energized after. So like there's not a lot of activities where two people are super drained. They go and they do this activity together and they feel better. Usually they just drain each other down even more. So I found that and then the community, the connection, the touch, everything. Like I think it really ticks a lot of boxes. I obviously moved to Romania last year as well. So like I've just met so many people as well, just through this activity.
Yeah, if I was a single man again, going about my business. I was actually just thinking about like I should start with my wife. We should do it, and it'll be good for my children to watch it. I can do it with my daughter, and I'll probably look up some tutorials and we'll play around with some.
Especially you're in Mexico, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're in the right place, right part of the world for dancing.
Yeah. I was here in my 20s as well, and I went through what you were talking about. I was just anxious about it and never took on the challenge of learning it. It's probably one of the few, like a lot of the stuff that I've done is simply, this is something I've believed I couldn't do. I better do it.
Yeah.
Anything that I've had doubts, I've got a bad memory. I've got, I can't juggle, can't learn languages, can't play guitar. Like, they're all the things that I've done. Can't do a back somersault. But the dancing one is probably one that I haven't really taken yet. So maybe that's the big thing to come out of today for me, Connor, to join the dancing ranks. I've been playing around with it a little bit with the ballet and with the beats and whatnot. But you
can do it forever as well, which I like. When I was in the Canaries, I started last year, and you're dancing with the 20-year-olds up to 70-year-olds. It's really, really nice activity.
Yeah, I've been on the Russian bounces as well, looking at the like the Ukrainian and Russian dance moves, because that's one of the big goals this year is to improve my jumping, and I've put that forth as like the big focus. So I've looked at who can really jump, and that type of dancing, their jumps are absolutely ridiculous, off the charts, but they're able to do single foot pistol jumps on the ball of the foot, alternating legs, and then crazy good jumps. So I look for the extremes of performance in whatever area. That seems like probably the most extreme level of leg performance, along with parkour, maybe, as far as like elastic leg ability goes. That's the dance. The dance is the big thing. The dance has got to be the thing, Connor.
I think so. Also, I just think, because you've done loads of Edo stuff and movement stuff, and when you start doing locomotion, it's like, whoa, mind-blowing. But then when you go into dance, locomotion's really super basic, when you go down that rabbit hole. So, yeah, it's very... I went to a festival in November last year, and I was just like, my brain was just so tired because just the complexity of the choreography, it's just at a different level to anything in the fitness realm.
Yeah, memorizing the patterns. When I was watching some dancing again the other day. I posted something in the ATG for Coaches chat. I was just like, how do they remember this? How do they coordinate this? This is phenomenal. It makes me think about non-local intelligence as well, like the synchronization that happens across so many people, and they know so many dancers. Like, the brain is phenomenal, and it doesn't happen in the way of like disciplined learning of someone telling you have to do this, and there's the anxiety that goes with that. It's like embodied, where once you do it a few times, you just know. And it has to be that you just know. Like, you can't consciously memorize 1,000 songs. Like Lyndon Holzheimer can play like 1,000 songs on the guitar, and it's got to be some other kind of intuitive thing that's sort of wired into you, or you're tuning into. It's very different to book learning type knowledge. The dancing journey.
Have you looked into any of the rhythmic benefits of movement?
Well, that's what Niels is looking to bring us into. You feel it a bit with the juggling and such, and bring in foot rhythms at the same time as you're juggling. I've been doing it with some of the jumping stuff, but not too much. So
yeah, I've heard no one talk about it, but I'm interested to kind of look into it more, but there's very little information online. Funnily enough, me and Niels are working together. We just started working together this week as well. So
he's a good man.
He's a great man. Yeah, I think this is a good segue into OnCom, mate. You've created a pretty phenomenal network. I came in August, and I'm just blown away. Like, the progress that it's given me over the last 5, 6 months is just pretty mind-blowing. Do you want to maybe touch on what's happened in the last 3 months and what the goals are for the coming year? And then we can talk about Montenegro as well. I think that would be a good thing to touch on. That was a complete game changer for me and the guys who went to it as well.
Yeah. So one of the big shifts this year has been shifting away from as much text conversation. And although everyone feels time poor, most people feel time poor in the 21st century. These kind of conversations are actually one of the best things that you can do online. If you're going to use this internet thing, then one of the best uses for it is to have a deep conversation where you explore ideas and hear what other people have to say about things. And really you learn about yourself, you learn about how you think about things, you learn about how you communicate. So we've shifted away from as much of the text communication on Telegram, which is the chat channel we've used, into more use of Discord and voice channel. And in that process, a lot of men have sort of tuned out of, okay, it's another software, or just, I don't have time for that. But those who've tuned in, we've had some of the best discussions and some of the best connections, and it's the best online experience of education that I've had. And we get it sometimes off the back of the weekly calls or at the workshops. Sometimes there's a nice discussion, but we've been having open-ended discussions that start with a quick update of what you've been doing, and then sometimes it's gone into all different types of areas. Sometimes it's about social media growth and quite direct things that relate to business and the core of Uncommon Success. One of the values is to make more money, but then it often goes super deep into other things. And this is the conversation itself in the way that you're talking about with the dance, where you enter feeling one way and you leave feeling another way. That's a huge thing, and that's a big shift that's happened. I've been talking with Nico Di Paoli quite a lot as well. The Time Chamber community came online around July last year. I think the first event was July last year. It was half Uncom players and half Nico's friends from France, and captured by Luke Carter, one of the Uncom players. And they made a documentary about it, and they got footage, and now it's become a viral brand. A lot of ambitious men know about Bali Time Chamber. They've either been there or they're planning to go there. It's a new concept. It didn't exist, this idea of kind of a 5-star self-development location. Now it exists, and most men either want to own one, want to go to one, want to live at one, want to take their family to live there or live next to it, because you can just see, okay, yeah, this makes more sense than anything that we're doing at the moment. So there's another location likely to come online, or maybe a few locations in 2024 with that. And Nico's, it's really the same thing that we're working on with Uncommon Success, but he's nailed the in-person experience of that. So we've been talking about how to work more closely together with the online side of things. And we spoke about it a little bit on our recent podcast. That's probably the biggest next thing, where with a bit more scale, we could do something a lot more exciting with Uncommon Success. The third piece is probably the working again with Paul Council. Paul directed me towards this Joseph Chilton Pierce stuff, and he's been talking about play since we first worked together, Stuart Brown, and many of the concepts that I value most, like more than I treasure any physical element of my life. Anything you can buy, I don't really value that much. It's not really that important. That's the funny thing. We all think we need to get money, but anything you can buy isn't that valuable. Your ability to dance is more valuable than the computer that you're looking at or the phone that you're looking at. But all the, most of the biggest concepts that I really treasure, and my understanding of how psychology works and how business works, and even the fact that I'm still married probably comes down to the conversations that I had with Paul and the books that he introduced me to and the lectures. And so we're starting again with him, which is really exciting. It's actually tomorrow. I need to get an email out to make sure everyone's aware.
What time is that on, Keegan?
It's about 4 p.m. my time. It's not a great time for Europeans because it's Australia and USA, but as always, it'll be recorded as well. It's 4 hours on the Saturday and Sunday in Australian time, which makes it Friday afternoon and Saturday afternoon in the United States. But that content's changed my life and changed my mind so deeply. And I'd read thousands of books. Like I've been a reader since my pre-teens. I love reading books, and I'm curious about things. I go deep on things. I go deep on them on YouTube. I go deep on them in books. I didn't know about a lot of the concepts that he is teaching, even though I've been obsessed about performance and obsessed about understanding how the brain works. And, so that's a huge thing as well. I'm very, very excited that we're going to go on that journey together. And the combination of those two things of, physical villages, deeper conversations online, and then better content to talk about, because there's intent and then there's content. So intent is, I want to be better. And then the content is how you get better. So the intent is always there in a way, like there's something that drives us forward that says, I know I need to do more with myself. But then the content is, okay, now I found salsa dancing that gives me an expression of this, and I get to exercise that intent. And when the intent is being expressed and you're developing it, you feel good. And that's what's exciting, is having more of the content that goes with the idea of, I want to be able to make as much money as I want. I want to be able to travel the world. I want to be able to have intelligent conversations. I want to be able to help other people out of the challenges that they're going through, transformation and such. So this is some of the big stuff on the Uncommon Success side of 2024 and where we're going into 2025.
Yeah, man. It's very what we were talking about a lot in Montenegro. So on Keegan's advice, I ran a retreat in Montenegro like 3 or 4 weeks ago now. If we didn't have that conversation, I would be still being like, yeah, I want to run a retreat at some point in my life, and now one's done and the other one in Tenerife is sold. It's done. That's done as well. Everything's paid for. So thank you very much for that, man. I really appreciate it.
Well done.
And we got really good content as well, which is amazing. So, something that came up a lot when me and the guys were talking in Montenegro was, because you said this on, I think the last one podcast we did was like the network effect of OnCom, because it's not even 2 years since Montenegro. That's a crazy thing as well. I was like, Jesus, not even 2 years ago, this wasn't an idea, and now we're here. Not even Keegan isn't even here now. So I'm just thinking, like 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. That's going to get very interesting when you've got this 200, 500, 1,000 guys who are like really leveling up. You can make extremely significant changes there very quickly with that type of network, right?
Yeah. I mean, there could be an event like that happening every week. Someone doing one about drumming and someone else doing one about video editing, and the location is there. And we're lacking. What we need is more numbers, more men who understand that everything that you want is closer than you think. You simply need to take that next step. And the intent is generally there. The idea inside of you of like, okay, I need to do this thing. And when you do that thing, you learn and you get better. And you don't need to know the whole big picture. It comes back to that mental health stuff that we were talking about before. Is there's so much conditioning and negative programming around all kinds of things that you don't realize you have until you go and try and build a business, or you go and think about running an event for peers, people that you look up to, and you think, well, you smash against what Bob Proctor calls it the terror barrier. Paul calls it the comfort zone. And it's like when you come up against this thing of, it just doesn't feel comfortable, you can do two things. You can put it in the one-day basket, or you can just get on with it and get it done. And I knew that you would give tons of value. You've got so much experience, Conor, and you've got the results that 99% are online. 99% of personal trainers would love to have the result that you have. You've been able to live in different countries and work with corporate people and sign high-ticket clients and low-ticket clients, and you've worked for some of the big companies in terms of understanding how the education's done. So I had zero concern that people weren't going to get value at the event. What I love about Uncommon Success is sometimes it's like playing to the home team. You get the opportunity to practice where already that the vibe's going to be good, people are good, and there's already people who you can get to go to that thing where if you put it on your Instagram, you'd probably get 10 trainers who are like, yeah, I want to, I like your stuff and I want to come and mastermind with you. But because we're already in a network, it's kind of easier to get started. And that goes across everything. If someone wants to be the world, be a great handstand teacher, well, cool. Like start with 10 guys here, and you can always get that start. And often it is that the start is the hardest part, because the start is where the identity changes. And once the identity changes and the self-image changes and self-belief changes, it's pretty easy after that. It's that first $1,000. It's those first 20, 50 posts on Instagram. It's all that stuff that often takes years and years and years, or just never happens. For most men, it never happens. They never get started. They never come off private, or they never start making content. But with the social support that we have, and again, it's a concept that comes out in this Magical Child work of Joseph Chilton Pearce. The idea is that you move from matrix to matrix through your lifetime. So the first matrix is the womb, and matrix actually means womb. And so you're birthed out of the womb into the second matrix, which is being attached to your mother and your mother's breast. And the first goal of the first 6 months of life is to understand the mother's face, understand the emotions, be able to read what's going on, because you can't start to voyage away from the mother if you can't understand what's safe and what's not. So you need to understand the mother's face, and that's why it's also important, the state of the mother through all of that journey. But then we have these matrix that we move through, and it's the safety of the previous matrix that is the foundation for the next one. So if you have that safe, loving environment with the mother, then you can go and venture out and explore the earth matrix and be able to survive in the earth. And if that matrix is safe, then you can continue on to the next journey. And I think that's what it provides with Uncommon Success, is this safe matrix where if someone doesn't get any response on Instagram, or if someone's from a friend or family says, you're a dickhead for posting that thing, then it doesn't impact the same way if you've got this other safe matrix we can go back to, who are doing similar things and are going to support you, regardless of whether the first post blows up or whether the first product sells or whatever. And if you can continue to stay in the game, then soon enough you get life on your own terms. For some guys, within a month or two, they're making thousands of dollars online. Like we've seen that this year. You met some of those guys there at that event. For others, it takes a year or two, but it doesn't really matter. If it was going to take you 4 years to be able to make enough money that you'd never had to have a job again, you could live anywhere in the world, what would you pay for it? People paying tens of thousands of dollars to go to university, where they know at the end of it, they're either going to have a job they don't like, they're probably going to be worse people. They know that they're going into an environment that's making them worse and challenging them to be worse and think worse. Relative to their values and beliefs, and it's costing a lot of money. You can't work at the same time, and but when you start to think about investing in yourself and you're building your own thing, then you crash up against all these demons, all these they're basically malware, software that's been installed that you go this feels really bad, I better stop. But you can reprogram, you can go past it. So you were doing that actively in real time with these men, and you can see, even you've given them your formula. Exactly this works. It's not that complicated, but you can see that it causes some of the guys they hit the next comfort barrier of, can I do that? And yeah, this is the process. So it's beautiful that we have these locations to do these things, and I think it's the most important work to be doing at the moment, and across all different realms. Online training is just one of them.
Yeah, man. You touched on a really important point there, around it really comes through within the network, is the safety of putting yourself out there, and even Finn, he was on the retreat. I don't know if you saw this, but he put out content at the retreat, and someone actually tore it apart basically online. He's a smart guy, but his whole Instagram is tearing down people's posts that's his business model, which I don't think is if that's all you're doing, I don't think that's a good business model, showing that you're smarter or whatever. But we were talking about it, and he showed it to me and a few of the guys, and he was like, how should I respond or whatever, and he just moved on past it. But it was if you're isolated by yourself and that happens, that might be the end of you ever posting again. Yeah. And that's just a small example, but I just think the support network and the safety is something you've done exceptionally well. And it's because of the way you lead. You know, there's no, people can speak up, speak their mind, and they're listened to, which I think for a lot of men, myself included, like a lot of the circles that we would have been in growing up would be very much like cutting each other down, you know, and then you don't want to speak up or be different. So I think that's I can't get over the benefits from being in this community from that side of things as well, and also for trying new things. You know that there's going to be 5 or 10 guys who will be like, yeah, we'll actually trial this with you. And if you're starting your own stuff, it's very lonely. So being an OnCom is a game changer, man.
Yeah. I didn't know that with Fino. I didn't know that someone went out of their way to make something negative. I've had it a few times myself, and it's not a nice feeling. It's it's a bigger discussion of why people choose to build their brands in that way. And but yeah, I love that you were there together, and he sees that it's not so real. You know, it's more real to be there having a meal and going for a walk in the hills and jumping in the river and all that stuff. You can't get too washed away in the emotions of a negative online experience when you have that physical world, and people who really know you, and they like, you know, you're a good man. Like, I enjoy your company, and you're strong, and you're intelligent. And you don't need to say it; it's just understood, because you're having those conversations that are proven that respect, that mutual respect. So yeah, it's great that sort of happened while he was there, and you could see that experience in real time. And it's good to consider the point of view of the other person. It's more just a question of how do you want to express this? Because in times gone by, like, it's, you know, one of you might be going to die if you decide to go to battle with someone. You know, like if you just decide, yeah, you're a piece of shit. Well, we live in the same village, so, you know, draw your sword or draw your gun, or, you know, like, let's work it out. Like, it's not the same with the online stuff, and so people decide to be more brave in a way, and more bold about what they would say that they would never do personal, like, say, face to face. I don't know who you're talking about, but I have my doubts whether they would just go up to someone and you know, tear them apart. Like, it just doesn't even have any sense. Like, you wouldn't bother doing that face to face. If you wanted to speak to them about it, you'd speak to them about it. But it's the nature of the mediums. And that's, again, another one of these memes. The medium is the message, is a message from Marshall McLuhan. He was a media studies expert, and he was writing about the medium is the message. And I met his nephew, who's continued along with his work. That's one of the memes from Paul that no one talks about, but the medium is the message. The idea is that when you send messages on Telegram, you reduce yourself to the capacities of that medium. So you will become only text and emojis. So how dexterous can you be? How much can you express yourself with text and emojis? Well, not that much relative to. And so Instagram, when you give yourself, okay, you got 1 minute to make a point or 30 seconds to make a point, you reduce yourself to that. And I have to cater to the lowest common denominator in terms of intelligence. And so everyone's encouraged now to speak at the level of a 5th grader in terms of vocabulary and whatnot. And it's like, well, where does this go? If we keep dumbing things down, if we keep using these mediums that don't require any nuance or intelligence, where does this go? And the people who we look up to are the ones who can have a long form conversation eloquently, who can be up on stage and express an opinion, who can do extreme physical feats. So all the real stuff in the real world is what we value, but then we're squeezing it into these mediums, and we're consuming through these mediums, and it's not bringing the best out in people. So, you know, what's the alternative? Well, the village is the answer that I have, and the feedback that you've given me is overwhelmingly the feedback that we get. And despite things not being perfect in Montenegro, the sleeping quarters and the bathrooms and the food and whatever, it's not a 5-star experience like the Bali Time Chamber. It's done with love, and it's done with care, and it's you know, it is what it is. It's nice, but the human experience that you're having there, and the fact that it is a new and novel environment, is part of one of the features. I love that you're never going to forget the physical environment either, looking out over the valley and going up into the trees and feeling like, I wonder who was walking here before, and it seems like no one comes here anymore, and all that stuff is these are great experiences. So Yeah, the journey of exploring what the best life, how well can we live? What are the components of that? I think that's the answer to the mental health thing. If we circle back, what are the things that make you feel mentally really good? Seeing a sunrise. Can you watch a sunrise and not feel some sense of awe and wonder? And that's beautiful. Is that possible? Can you look out over a lake, a valley, and not feel that? Can you have a conversation like this with someone who cares about you, who wants to have a conversation and not feel like, yeah, that was good? Can you learn a new skill, the salsa dancing? You dance with someone and you nail the moves. Can you do that and not feel like, wow, like I'm proud of myself and there's some exhilaration in that? Like, what if we just did the things that we know make us feel good and work towards being able to express that more fully? Because I think there is an art to expressing those things. Like, you can only enjoy an experience to the extent that you can put your attention on it. And so attention is a skill. Attention is something that we can learn. And I don't think it's as much of a mystery as people make out. It's now this big mystery of why the mental health crisis. Men under 50, the biggest danger to a man under 50 is himself. And that's statistically in the West, and it's by design. But we can design the other way as well. If they can design that we feel like that, then we can design that we don't feel like that. I know you've mentioned there that you've been to using a therapist to extend your understanding of yourself and your ability to express yourself, and I imagine that has an impact on the way you coach other men and think about their journeys as well. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, there's a very strong mental health history in my family. So my mother has schizophrenia. My auntie's got depression for 20, 30 years. My other auntie is dead from suicide. My granduncle had schizophrenia as well. So this is something I was always very, very conscious about. And then in 2018, I reached out to start getting therapy to help working through all these things, which I don't necessarily think everyone needs to get some sort of therapy, but for me it was very, very helpful. IFS therapy in particular, internal family systems, has changed my life completely. It was actually interesting because in the village I was talking to Kevin, a young Irish guy, I think he's like 22. And he was talking about the Selves book from Paul, which getting access to this information as a young man is absolutely, as a young anyone, is incredible. But that was a really helpful framework for me to understand myself through, is that it's not just me, Conor, I'm one part or one self. There's multiple parts to me. There's the part who wants to excel and do really well in business or whatever. There's a part who wants to hide and eat junk all day. And in IFS, it all makes a lot of sense, from why there's certain parts they're called firefighters, who will jump in and protect exiles, which would be like the vulnerable inner parts of yourself. So I think for a lot of people, myself included, like, your firefighter is just taking over all the time because you don't know how to deal with your environment, which gets exasperated by lack of exercise, poor food, inability to open up and even understand yourself, toxic relationships. All these things will make it worse. But I think for a lot of people, the start is literally just like physical exercise is probably the easiest intro, I think, for a lot of people in particular. But the environment we're in is set up to be fat, to be in pain, to be sick, to not feel good physically. And that's why I think getting into some sort of a community, like, I'm already in the fitness industry, but I'm way more motivated now with physical fitness than I was 6 months ago, just because I'm around savages, in the best possible way. So I think, I think the mental health issue, it's not like, oh, just do it better. It's like, if you're on autopilot mode today, you're going to be stuck on social media all day. You're going to feel like shit because of that. You're going to be eating crap food. You're not going to be moving. So you're most likely going to be struggling with your mental health and your physical health as a default. I think that's the power of the villages in particular, is you can go deep with like people on the same wavelengths. Even I've gotten so much benefit from I was teaching it, but I was like, whoa, like I just disconnected for like 8 days, 9 days with a bunch of people that felt like good friends, even though I'd never met them before, which is crazy.
Yeah. The trust thing comes really fast when you come from the same group, and takes like a minute or two until the ice is broken and you just in a deep conversation, or you're into a deep training session or whatnot. And it's better than it's ever been, Conor. In Real Movement, we had the common thing of the training, and there was nice connections and really strong bonds formed, and they worked together around business and around training. But there wasn't a discussion too much around the deeper stuff, that especially the psychology is really, really great thing to have as part of the conversation. And even going a bit deeper into business it pushes you more. I think a lot of guys are wanting to experience more of themselves and experience that they can pay attention and persist through something, and they're doing it with like ice baths or long distance running or training hard. But there's deeper levels to that with the business stuff, where you have to reflect more deeply, and you can't just muscle through it. You can't just endure pain. And I'd say a lot of the role models today, and the role modeling is, you should endure more pain. You're great if you can endure more pain. But who's actually pushing out the idea of how do you cultivate more pleasure? How do you make life more joyous? Not in the short-term indulgent pleasure of pizza and a Magnum, because there's plenty of push towards that, or a quick fix dating solution through an app or whatever. There's plenty of push towards that, but things that you really love, that you're really proud of, that are fully aligned with your spirit and your higher purpose, you can experience a lot of joy in that, or you can mechanically go about it and get absolutely no joy out of the process. And I've experienced that, of having $50,000, $100,000 plus months and getting no real joy or satisfaction out of that, because it's just like I'm just anxiously driving towards the thing that I think I need to drive towards, versus now stepping back and having some of these conversations, just going, how good is this? The rest of my life is going to be amazing because I get to have these conversations for the rest of my life. And I get to see my boy grow up in this environment. He knows a bunch of, you guys that he's met in villages, and he looks forward to seeing certain guys who he's played with and had experiences with, 7 years old. This is how it's meant to be. He wants to teach. He's really good at the Greek alphabet, and he's learnt the Greek numbers, and he's excited to teach others those things. And then he'll learn a bunch of new stuff as well. And no one's really talking about this stuff too much, of like, how good could we make it? It's a question I've been asking myself since 2015 or so, when I realized like I'm probably never going to have to work again in the way that I had to work before, like in terms of having a job. And 2014 I left working full-time in rugby league. 2015 I was like, yeah, this is probably going to work. And so I was like, okay, well, how good can we make life from here? But then I ended up just running it in the same way as I ran my job, and running myself in the same way. And it's taken until now really to step back from that and be like, no, I could really enjoy this. Like this could be a lot of fun. So yeah, there's big changes, but learning those mental models as well as doing the things. So it's these simple thoughts, like the scale of human consciousness. Are you familiar with that work of David Hawkins?
No.
I think it's, I'm pretty sure I'm getting the names right there, but yeah, I read his books. Power versus Force is one of the books. It came up through Paul's work, and one of the other men who was in the Elite Money Club, Darren Mansa. Brian Mesa is one of the other men in the network. Darren Mansa is really into that work as well. And it's the idea that you have a sort of mental tone that you exist with or a level of consciousness, and you tend to stay around that. You have minor fluctuations, but you have almost a constant level that you stay at through your life. And the lowest levels are like shame and fear, and then it goes up to anger, and then it goes up to courage, and then it goes up to willingness. And that's really what we do. And then eventually it's love, and it's these really expansive states. But the idea is that a few people in very high state of consciousness on the collective, it has an impact on millions of others. And it requires a different understanding of how the universe works and how consciousness works. But it's a very powerful concept. And once you understand it, you always have it to reference back of like, okay, where's this person's general consciousness at, and where's mine at? And it made me more aware of like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm mostly pretty anxious and pretty much about driving things forward. And it's like, so there's this point score thing here, and I'm down here. and that's a good thing to face. And there's another system that has a tone scale, and it rates in like 16, 20 different areas. And it's between like 0.1 and 4. And it goes across health, and it goes across physical pain, and it goes across relationships. It goes across how you do business and your willingness to work. And that author says you're about the same across all of them. So if you can identify yourself clearly in one area, that is where you are in the others. But you can test yourself across multiple. This is the idea that sort of sits on top of or parallel to the idea of personalities and understanding your personality, or understanding the selves that are running you. Then you have this other idea of like a baseline scale that you operate on, of where you're at sort of energetically, or where you're at mentally, of whether you're bringing people, that it's a, once you have these concepts, you can't unlearn them. You can't unthink them. They're like memes where once they're stuck, they're stuck. We have all these other memes around what the KFC slogan is and what the McDonald's slogan is. And there's all kinds of memes that are installed in us, what a salesperson is. And you reflexively think, okay, that when you reflexively think something negative, it's worth considering, okay, why do I think that thing's negative when I don't really know anything about it? Where did that belief come from? And a lot of them are about ourselves, or about business, or about traveling the world, or about maybe paying less tax. That was one for me. I immediately thought, if you pay less tax, you're a bad person. And then I learned the rules, and I'm like, hang on, everyone who owns a business, people who own businesses tend to set up companies. There's more companies in the US and Canada and Hong Kong, because if you set up a company there and you don't operate in that country, then you don't pay tax in that country. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, millions of people are doing these things, and I feel like I'm a bad person if I even consider it. Like, why is that? So these are just examples. They're simple examples, but they go across relationships, they go across business. And so
I think for coaches as well, a big one is sales. Like, you shouldn't get good at sales because you're scamming people. That was a big one for me. I was talking to my friend about this actually 2 weeks ago as well. He's a teacher, and he wants to move online and just help people online. But he's like, the marketing's very off-putting. And we had a really good conversation, because I was like, there's people out there who want to sell shit to people that's really damaging, that are getting exceptionally good at sales and marketing. So it's your duty really to get better at it, to sell health and wellness to people.
Yeah. When you think about it, I saw one of the ones yesterday. Whoever put the S in fast food is a marketing genius. It's like, it's really fat food, right?
Yeah.
But like, you think about it, how it should be really tough to convince people to treat themselves like junk, eat terribly, put their mind in the gutter every day, do things that they're not proud of. But somehow it becomes normal, you feel quite good about it. You feel quite good about getting drunk or getting high or whatever it is, like, because that stuff's so programmed in through movies, music, So then you have to look at, well, who set all this stuff up? Why did they set it up this way? I'm not going to fight against that. That's a big thing. But I've known it's not for me for a long time. I don't want to be a participant in that. And so what are the ways that you can opt out? You can only opt out to a certain degree. You can't fully opt out, but what are the ways that you can opt out? For me, living authentically to that and having the hope and the dream that more people will choose to live consciously according to things that they love, rather than somehow, like there is a kind of a joy that comes from getting drunk and realizing, yeah, okay, I'm trashing myself here, and we're doing it together.
Yeah.
But it's better. Like it's not a battle for me not to drink anymore. It's not a battle for me not to eat McDonald's anymore. It's better to be doing the things that I'm proud of. And when people start making this transition, they have this big identity crash of like, okay, am I going to face that all these things that I've been doing that have been programmed into me to be joyful, I'm not proud of them and they're not making me better. Are you going to face that and rewire, or are you going to stick with the crowd? This is kind of the crisis that a lot of men go through in their first 6 months in Uncommon Success. You see, like, am I going this way or am I going that way? Do I want to develop myself? Can I put myself through learning new languages, learning musical instruments, building a business, traveling the world? Or should I just see if it works out okay, following the path of college, mortgage, job, and just hope that it works out? Because it sort of worked out okay for 2 generations ago, and it half worked out for the last generation, and it's 1/10 working out for my generation. So maybe it'll work out for me. Feels like a lottery ticket now to think you're going to have job, mortgage, credit cards, live in a Western country in a standard way, and your children and your children's children are going to do well. Like, to me, it seems, if you just look at the trends, it seems like an extreme long shot, a massive risk to assume that your currency is going to stay, that the culture's going to be anything like what it was for your grandparents' generation. It's already not, but so what do we do? And that's the question that I'm answering, and I'm encouraging others to answer.
Yeah, I'd like to talk to you about, I'm doing the lean countdown diet now, and it's going really well, but a lot of things are set up to do it. But one thing that actually hit home, it was so simple, but you're like, just, be proud of what you eat. And I was like, that, I never feel good if I eat shit, like, and I'm like, I feel like I don't feel good. Obviously, there's sometimes I'm enjoying a takeaway or something. I'm like, yeah, this is great. But a lot of the times I'm just eating because I'm stressed or whatever. But for you, Keegan, when did that shift happen? And do you think it's from like being in more like leadership roles that you feel more motivated in that sense? Or was there a certain time where you just like, yeah, this is like identity, I'm just, in alignment with everything?
I ate a lot of McDonald's and drank a lot of all-you-can-drink soft drink with performance in mind, because I was so skinny. I was 10 kilos lighter than all my friends, even though I trained harder than them. And I thought I needed more calories, right? And I was like, I'm not getting fat, but I'm not really getting heavier. So I just need to smash as much of this food into me as I can. And it was probably the health issues that encouraged me to shift how I was eating. But the ideas of, the carnivore diet wasn't a thing. Paleo diet wasn't a thing. Even ancestral eating. None of this was a thing 20 years ago. Everyone was just eating wheat and sugar and processed stuff. But it was probably health issues. I got into it a bit. I read How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, Paul Chek's first book, around when it came out in the early 2000s. Yeah, it's phenomenal. And his Dirt Facts series is amazing as well. If that's one thing that comes out of today, watch his Dirt Facts series on YouTube. It's It's a game changer. It's so deep and so beautiful. But I wanted to improve my health around that time. And I went through a period where I didn't eat any ice cream. I didn't eat anything that I thought wasn't good for me. I was eating a lot of 2-minute noodles and beans on toast because I thought that was good for me. In my early mid-teens, that was sports nutrition at the time, was jelly beans and sugar drinks. And I was in the national system in a way, the local levels of it, and I was following the guidelines, and it was killing me. It was really not good for my brain. It was when I first started to get really bad thoughts and depressed type stuff, or thinking, do I want to be here and whatnot. In my mid-teens, and I wasn't eating any fat. As a boy going through puberty, it's a form of castration. It's not a good thing, but it's what they were telling me to do, so I did it. And I didn't have any other frame of reference to change at that stage. But it wasn't really until 28 when I came back from Latin America, the third trip that I did over there. I was broke. I was sick. I had sort of chronic fatigue at that time. My gut was destroyed. I'd had constant gut issues. Living on beans and tortillas and drinking the water out of the river wasn't good for me. Drinking sweet, weak coffee every day, living in little villages. I was living on no money. I was living with the poorest people in Mexico and living their lifestyle, and it wasn't good for me. And when I trained, I would get headaches, and I would just go and sit in the dark because I couldn't function after I came back from that trip. So I had to rebuild myself from the start. I had no money. I had no direction in life. I was sick. And I started to train, and I started to research the Paul Chek stuff, and I started to research Poliquin stuff more. And I trained at the Roosters gym, and that led to me getting the job with the Catalan Dragons. So then I was the coach, and I was encouraged to express what I believe in to the players. And so, I started to share Sally Fallon stuff as well, Nourishing Traditions. If you haven't heard a Sally Fallon lecture, it's beautiful stuff as well. Paul Chek and Sally Fallon were kind of related there at some stage in terms of nutrition and physical degeneration. That book is a uniter for them. Dr. Weston A. Price and Pottinger's Cats is super, super powerful as well. Once you understand these concepts about nutrition, you just can't take any fitness nutrition guys saying it's all about your macros seriously, because they just don't care about generational health. They don't. A lot of them choose not to have children and whatnot, which is a different conversation. But if you care about generational health, then you need to consider what your great-great-grandma wanted your great-grandma to eat. And they knew, and they cared, and they wanted healthy generation after healthy generation. They had no medical system to rely on. We don't either, but we think we do. It's an illusion. And so if it's life or death, then you eat, because if you get an infection and you die, that's a sad day for the family. And we don't die immediately from these infections in the way that we used to. So that allows us to kick the can down the road and think, well, I can put this health stuff off until I'm 60 or 70 when I retire, with all that retirement fund that I'm going to have. It's a whole big series of myths that people buy into. But it was there at the France team. I remember we had a preseason camp, and I'd set up a presentation, and I was delivering this presentation to the guys about, don't eat so much bread and sugar and why. And I was talking to French men who were fit, men, and they were all just
the tough sell.
Their baguettes. But we didn't have baguettes for the 2 years that I was there. We weren't serving bread at any of the meals, and that was probably the first time they hadn't eaten bread at the meals. So even just from a mental perspective of, all right, I'm doing something here. We're doing something that others aren't doing. I'm doing something I haven't done before. Most of them would have been having bread all the time when they were at home. But even just that experience of, like, he's crazy enough to think, he cares enough to want to present this to me. He believes in it. He doesn't ever eat that stuff. He's going to the organic shop, all that. Like, I was fully living it. And that gave me the opportunity. Even if they didn't buy into it, they knew I bought into it. And that made them look at the training stuff that I was delivering them, which was also different to what they'd done in the past, and think, well, maybe he's crazy enough that it's going to work. And we went from, the team had come last the year before, and we held down first place for a number of weeks in the second year. And they saw, like, all the local kids becoming top players and becoming athletic and becoming much more skillful. I didn't fully realize at the time how different it was to what everyone else was doing, because I'd come out of the jungle in Mexico to be the strength coach in France, and then at the Roosters as well. Like, we ran a completely different program to what anyone was running at the time and what everyone runs now. And we got different results. And clearly the strength training is only one factor. I was also working hard on nutrition and on skill development. But we had a great coach as well. We had good rosters, and there's many factors in why we're able to set the all-time record for 0 score lines opposing teams, back-to-back minor premiership.
Did injuries go down as well, Keegan?
Yeah, we used the least number of players both years for the Roosters when we won the regular season. Yeah. So,
recovery and
all factors.
Inflammation probably.
Yeah, and the style of training, we're doing more of the Ido Portal loaded mobility type stuff. Not as much as I would probably do now, but we're doing more of that than the other teams. We're doing more max effort, super heavy stuff, like the West Side Barbell, which I also think is a great injury preventer. We were doing more strongman type training, which I think is a great injury preventer. We were doing more different types of movement, putting them in awkward positions specific to rugby, making them get up and down off the ground and step off both feet during the warm-ups, which is something that other teams weren't doing as much of in the way that we were doing it. And so, the encouragement that I would give with that is have the courage to do stuff that others aren't doing. And test it for yourself. You can read the books, and I love reading the books, but when you experience it, then you know much more deeply. So it got better. That nutrition in France was better, and then I did ketogenic diet for a time, and that was better for me. What I later learned, I'd had fungal issues with athlete's foot since I was maybe 10, 12 years old, and I had these creams and whatever. But what I later realized is that's stuff coming out of the body that the fungus eats. Like, it's a feature, not a bug. So there was too much sugar coming out of my blood into my skin, and the fungus was eating it. So I needed to do something about why I have so much fungus and how do I keep feeding it. And doing the ketogenic approach was better for me. And then I tried the carnivore diet because I was still getting some seasonal allergies, even though I was gradually getting healthier and gradually having more success and training better and recovering better. But I still had seasonal allergies. And as a speaker, allergies are an annoying thing. You got red eyes, your nose is running, your voice doesn't sound the same. It was really tough for me as someone who's kind of perfectionist as well. I couldn't do it playfully and just make fun of myself at that time. I was just felt really bad about it. But I was also stubborn enough not to take medications. So that pushed me to want to do the carnivore diet. I heard about carnivore diet off Sean Baker and Joe Rogan. I think it was the first big public thing about carnivore diet. And I'd actually seen, because I research everything, I'd seen meat-only diets years before, but it was very obscure and I didn't have the courage to go through with it. But seeing Dr. Sean Baker express that on a podcast, he really believes in this, and he's rowing very well. So he's got the physical results. And this is all good lessons for coaches. Like, if you can embody the message and do something physically that shows, well, he can't be lying about the rowing erg feet. He's not jigging that. So he says it's better for him. He says that
in his 50s as well.
Yeah. And it went down from when he was doing paleo. He's like, oh, yeah, I was better on paleo, and now I'm rowing faster on carnivore. Like, well, that's pretty compelling to me. That's interesting. So I decided to give it a shot. I actually had a 4-day, just like what you did in Montenegro, I had a 4-day camp in Canberra after having a consulting gig with the Roosters. So I was consulting with them in Sydney, NRL team, and then I drove down to Canberra. I listened to that podcast on the way down, and I decided to start during that trip. So then I arrived to Canberra to do this event. I'm like, yeah, I'm only eating meat, boys. And they're like, what? Like, yeah, meat. Only meat. And they're like,
you're gonna get cancer from that, man.
At that stage, yeah. And then I stuck with that for the next 6 months. I was like, I'll just do it for 2 weeks, and then I did it for 6 months because I felt good with it. But I got into fasting, and it's just taking the challenges of, okay, well, what does this feel like? People want to talk about it. What does this feel like? And if it's got a historical precedent, then it makes more sense as well. Like, is it possible that my ancestors had time where they only ate meat? Well, yeah, that seems pretty likely. If you're pale-skinned, then at some stage there probably was not much more than meat around at some stage in our past. So, evolutionary perspective, it makes sense as well. That's the same lens for the psychology. From an evolutionary perspective, how did people in villages feel? well, they never felt fully alone. They always felt like someone depended on them. They always felt like they mattered. That it mattered if they were if they were the village champion at something. That was a big thing. Now, because we've got this YouTube thing, no one's the champion anymore. Oh, I can do a 90-second handstand. Yeah, but everyone can do it. You know, look at this guy. He can do a 90-second handstand on his fingertip. So
Yeah.
all your personal achievements lose all their significance in that sort of, in the modern view of things. So look at it through the ancient lens, because they weren't feeling like 100%. They weren't feeling like we feel now. The mental health thing is a modern manufactured thing that is very different to what was there in the past. But yeah,
I find it interesting. Like, I think about it a lot because of there's such a history in my family and the nature versus nurture. So like, if your parents have mental health issues, it might necessarily be a genetic thing that passes it on to you. It's just you're not in a good environment, so it's going to probably affect you mentally as well. So it's very interesting because like I can see my cousins on my mother's side as well. A few of them are struggling a lot, but the components of their life aren't really in place to be conducive to a quality health, which is very sad because I think it's very fixable. And like, once you're in the system, you're dead. Like, literally, it's very sad. You're just medication. That's kind of it. Like, it's not like, hey, maybe we should look at your diet or exercise. And just to be really clear, like I think some people, if it's schizophrenia or bipolar, it's very serious, and you mightn't be at 100%, but you can be dramatically better from a health standpoint, I think. There's also very interesting stuff coming out with the ketogenic diet, and I think it's schizophrenia.
Yeah.
I was trying to get my mother to do it, and then she was going more plant-based, and I was like, you need to eat more meat. But her health is much better now, so that's the big thing.
Right. Yeah, there's many approaches that can help, and people do get results with plant-based for a period of time and doing certain things. Like, there are many different approaches. You should always look at things from energetic level, mechanical level, chemical level. The Bruce Lipton stuff of it's the environment, stupid, but it's the energetic, mechanical, chemical. How do we improve all three of those? So social support for your mother, getting out and doing a walking, getting some time in the sun, improving posture, all those mechanical things. And then what's going on in the bloodstream. What's going on in the bloodstream is partly what's coming out of the brain as well, the neurotransmitters and the hormones and coming out of the gonads, and all that stuff is going to affect psychology as well. So we want that integrated approach. I think that's the big thing. We're not saying no one should ever take any medication or we should ban all the medications now. It's just like, hey, if there's 50 factors here, let's address 49 of them as well as the one that you're using at the moment.
Such an important point. Yeah. Mate, one last thing I'd just like to, because I'm conscious of your time, is how do you fit it all in? You're like, what's the day look like? So you look at Keegan and you're smashing everything. You've got 3 kids, wife, multiple businesses. So yeah, I think that's a good thing to maybe share with people as well. Like, how have you cultivated the way of setting up your life?
Yeah, it's a dynamic process. It's not static. It's always a rebalancing, especially because we've moved around so much in the last 4 years. We haven't really had a home since we left Australia in 2019. We sold our house, which is kind of the original Uncom village up on a hill, 4 acres. We sold that and moved. We went to England and then went to America, and then we got stuck in COVID in Australia, but we'd already sold our house. So we're bouncing from Airbnb one to another. It's been that sort of life for the last 4 years, which is not really the ideal environment to build a business, to have 2 young children homeschooling and no home and new locations. So I have to thank my wife as well for being able to come through. And a lot of women just simply would say, no, I'm not moving again. I can't, handle meeting another social group of women. And it's different for women building bonds and relationships as well, and trust and all that stuff. And she's come along with me on the journey, and a lot of times very, very joyously, sometimes a little bit reluctantly. But at the moment, there's a big emphasis on the time with their children and putting more emphasis on their foundational learning. The Rudolf Steiner method, and Rudolf Steiner was a genius who came up with biodynamic farming and also Steiner schools and Waldorf schools. And he had his own village manor in Germany, and he would pull together a group of intelligent men to run lectures over a series of days. Some of those lectures you can find online today. They were 100 years ago. They would record the audio from the lecture, like someone would dictate notes, and then you can get them in spoken word stuff. But he believed that you shouldn't overly focus on book smarts and teaching children to read and write before 7, that the brain is actually meant to be more in a creative, playful state and absorbing things as they are. I can't explain it as well as I should, but yeah, that was the approach that we wanted to go with, to not hammer the reading and writing early. But it's time now. They're 7 and 9, and they could do with more support around that. So at different times, it's been my wife's responsibility. It's just like I just need to work hard on the business, darling. Like, you need to, would you like to work on this? But now it's my responsibility, and I'm really enjoying putting more time in with that. But if I'm going to get that quality time with them, we do these books called Life of Fred, and we've got another thing, which anyone who's interested in homeschooling or just supporting their children's education, it's a great experience to read these Life of Fred books. I really love them. There's a PhD, Stanley F. Schmidt, made these books. Extremely intelligent, probably the most interesting books I've read. And they're the maths books for the children. But they have these stories, and the stories have Greek history and philosophy and all this social commentary mixed in with basic mathematics. But then they go up all the way to
story-based to teach maths.
Yeah, and it goes up to all the way to level 3, the third year college or something as well. So it's a big series. So
amazing.
It's an amazing life's work. These are the men that should be like the LeBron James. I think Stanley F. Schmidt should be as known as LeBron James or, Elon Musk, because what's more important than education for children and future generations? But this man, no one's ever heard of him. I've never heard anyone bring him up ever. But it's probably the most intelligent stuff I've ever read. So that's one part. And then the Alpha Phonics is another one, which is Samuel Bloomfield. And he wrote Crimes of the Educators, a book about how people were deliberately being taught to read in a way that would cause dyslexia and cause learning disorders and lead to a life of frustration for particularly a lot of young boys. And so, his system for learning to read, he worked on that for 40 years, and he's got a nice system, and we've started to implement that. I've wanted to use it a few times, and I didn't print it out and blah, blah, blah. But we're finally going through that system. We tried another one, which Jordan Peterson recommended, which others had used, but it didn't work that well for us. So, that's a big part of life at the moment. I train every day. I usually train twice. And at the moment, it's very free.
What times do you normally train?
Usually a bit after this, before breakfast. Usually train around 9. It's sunny in this little backyard that we have at the moment. And then usually have some food after that. Sometimes wait until 1 or 2 o'clock to have food, but often I eat around 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock the first meal. Usually have 2 meals, but I quite like having 1 meal. Usually have second meal around sort of 5 o'clock. Prefer to have it earlier. But
sometimes end up family, is it, in the evening?
Yeah, but they often eat again at like 8 or so. Sometimes I eat at that time as well. And then I love work. I would happily research and write and contact people to work with them and do these kind of calls, coaching calls all day long. But I do feel as though my calling in this lifetime is to learn the family thing and learn how to engage fully in that. And it doesn't come as naturally, but it's extremely rewarding. I love my children. I've always loved my children, but I'm learning to be able to play with them and to be able to understand that they're at a different stage in development and they're complete in their own stage. Like that is a stage, and they're doing it as they're meant to be doing it. It's not that they're fractions of people on their way to being full people. It's that this is a type of person in a way. The two ideas exist at once. Like they have to develop and they will develop, but the stage they're at is what they're meant to be at, and they're doing that the way they're meant to be doing it. And the challenge of the adult is to be able to understand that and respect that and interact at that level. And again, something that the modern dialogue around children and wives and stuff is disgusting as well. You know, the ball and chain is sort of a common way to refer to the wife in Australia, and people talk about once you have children, you're never going to be able to travel again, and you know, life's not going to be fun anymore, and all that stuff. And it really should be and can be, and is the opposite if you make it that. So yeah, that's
the real negative kind of about kids and family in general. It's like it's too expensive. The world's going to hell. Like that's the narrative now, and it's like really negative. It's interesting, like because it's probably the thing that we're all here to do is to like have kids and continue generations. That's what's always happened. So that's an interesting narrative that a lot of people are like, I don't want to bring kids into this world because it's dangerous, but it's like the safest time in history as well. So it's interesting.
And it's primarily the Western world that has that perspective and opinion, or as a country becomes more westernized, their birth rates will drop. And there's the whole narrative of we're using all the resources and all that stuff. Every time I go in a plane, I see fields of green. Every time I see a place that humans cultivate with permaculture, it looks like extreme abundance. And so none of the narratives make any sense to my senses, but they make sense from other perspectives. And these are deep things, deep conversations. And the idea with the villages, Connor, maybe is a good idea to finish on, is if we can create this safe matrix, even if you never live there with your family, even if some of them never go to the villages, but if they know, okay, there's some families living over there and they're living well and they've got food and they've got clean water and they're having a good time together and they've got books and they're living in Vanuatu or Montenegro or Bali or wherever it's going to be, and they're having a good experience of life. And that's an option for me. If I chose to, if things got to a point where I am, where it's like, I don't really think I want to be here anymore. I don't think this has my best interest at heart, that there's another place that they could go to. And the idea used to be you needed 10 cows. If you had 10 cows, you were wealthy enough to be able to have a wife and family. If you didn't have 10 cows, you couldn't get married. Montenegro. I don't know if Lubo shared that with you.
No, he didn't. That's good. Yeah.
And interestingly, 10 cows is 100 goats. So it's 10 goats to a cow. But if you set that as a wealth goal of like, okay, somewhere in the world, I need to have 10 cows. And that's where I want to get to. Then you're kind of set, because you can build a hut and you can live on milk. You can live on cheese. Food doesn't grow on trees. Money doesn't grow on trees, but food does. And that's the thing, where it's like we're all under all this pressure. We can't afford to have children anymore. But yet my great-great-grandfather had, he was one of 22. And they could afford
Same as my grandfather. Yeah. My grandfather was one of 22.
Yeah. So it's like, hang on. Yeah. We've got all this material wealth now. We've got all this technology. We can produce food more simply than we could before, but yet nobody has 22 children anymore. So what's going on? My grandfather on the other side was one of 10 or 11. So the big idea is, if we can create a model of, okay, there's 10 families living like this in this location, that location, then at least everyone else has to question which is better, which would be better for me. Would I rather have all my time to myself and have no pressure for being able to feed my family or not? And there's a lot of great places to live. Like I would love to live in America again and live in a castle in France. And there's beautiful in Switzerland, and there's beautiful places everywhere. But there's also this trend of, well, they're bringing it all down. The culture is deteriorating. The food quality is deteriorating. The education system's deteriorating. So I don't know if the trend is going to continue. So the big idea is to, if you can create an alternative, then it at least poses the question. I think Bali Time Chambers posed the question very well to hundreds of thousands of men. What would my ideal week look like? What environment would I love to live in? What's the best environment to live in? That's a question that's being posed by that. And Uncommon Success is it's creating the online version of that, where it's like, what's the best environment we can create digitally for men's development? That's the question that we're answering. And then, I think if each of us answers the question that we're here to answer the best way that we can, I think incorporating salsa dancing into your program or giving every client that you work with the equivalent of salsa dancing would be a blessing and a triumph. If everyone does the best thing they can imagine, or at least moves towards it, with what would one step towards that be? If you work in a 9 to 5 at the moment, or you're an electrician and you're just like, I'm not sure if I'm living my highest purpose here, what would one step towards it be? And I think we all know what that next one step is. My personal belief is that there's a divine force that's guiding us towards an excellent life, but there's also other stuff that distracts us from being able to be in touch with that message. So for me, that message was really clear of villages. You need to get land, produce food, bring cool people together. It just seems like a logical thing to do. That's when I traveled and backpacked in my 20s, no smartphone, sitting on buses for 10 hours, thinking to myself. That's the thing that kept coming up for me. So I wish I'd have bought into it faster, sooner, and believed in it more, but that's what I'm doing. And I wonder what yours is, and I wonder what everyone's is.
Yeah, man. No, well, thank you so much for actually taking action on your ideas, because I think that's the cool thing. People talk about these crazy things, but this is actually how I was there, 3 weeks ago. So it started already. And I think a really cool thing as well, I see with clients, I'm sure you're seeing it with the network and coaching people over however many years now, is when people start improving themselves, then they start leading others in their life. And it has this like ripple effect in a positive way, which I think is what you're getting at there as well. The last thing I want to finish with, mate, is I think it's a good question to ask you in all of these interviews, is what you've changed your mind on over the last few months.
Probably that competition thing is a huge one for me, Connor. Like, my life has been about winning. I loved winning as a 7-year-old more than any 7-year-old I ever met. I would compete so hard in primary school, at cricket at lunchtime, at handball before school. Like, everything was life and death. And I was usually one of the best ones because I cared about it more. And I didn't even consider that some of these other kids they're just playing. Like, that didn't cross my mind, that they might just be doing it for the joy of it, not a fraction. So I've been living like that. And I completed another personality typing thing, the Enneagram personality test. And I came out as the achievement dominant type personality. And there's 2 big things that came out of it for me. One is the idea that all of these are socially conditioned and that you can learn to move fluidly between all of them, which is kind of what it says with the selves. But I never really heard that idea with the personality stuff. We do it with the genius typing as well in Uncommon Success, with Paul's stuff. And there's 16 types. It's based on the Jungian psychology. But I never considered the idea of, like, what if you could move fluidly between all of them? And I think that's the thing that's on my mind at the moment. It's like, oh, okay, yeah. Because the idea is that there's an I underneath all of this stuff that isn't these personality types. That's your true essence, and that you can learn to operate from it, but you have to make considerable effort to be able to pay attention and to be able to be aware of what your real I is versus the conditioning. And this is Uspensky and Gurdjieff. Gurdjieff was known as one of the most brilliant philosophers of 100 and something years ago. Again, no one knows about him. No one cares these days. But Uspensky's work is something that Paul introduces to. Man's Possible Evolution is on YouTube. It's about 2-3 hours, mind-blowing stuff, really interesting stuff. The psychology of man's possible evolution. I always leave out the psychology. So this is one thing that's resonating and challenging. The other thing is, I love it's a $12 test. If anyone wants to do it, maybe I'll put it in the link.
Yeah.
You get your top 3, and it's like one of these is definitely sort of where you predominantly operate from. For me, the top one was the achiever, and I'm quite strongly from there, but I can see the second one as well. But then it tells you like you operating at your best within that versus in the middle with that versus the lowest form of that. And then where you evolve to if you do that successfully versus where you devolve to if you're not using that successfully. So it's quite detailed in using that type. I think people have seen the typing systems of, your red or your blue, like there's all different ones that we've used. And they're interesting. But the thing is, okay, what do you do next? How do you get the most out of yourself if you're that person? What is you at your worst in that person? So me at my best in that achiever type is completely letting go of wanting to be the best of anything. That's the hardest thing ever.
Yeah, that's great, man.
And so that's the thing that's rattling with me at the moment and it's about fully giving yourself to supporting the achievement of others, because you can see what they can achieve for themselves that they can't achieve. But if you're wanting to win from your own side, then you won't do that, because by definition, you don't want others to win if you're wanting to win. And I do clash with this. Like, I'm super proud of the influence I've had with Nico and Ben Patrick. And there's dozens of guys now who are millionaires and they've done amazing things. And they tell me, my life changed dramatically when we're having these conversations.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's a part of me that sort of like wants to compete or resents or, like that, and that is holding me back in some way. So yeah, this is the big idea right now, and appreciate the question because I haven't spoken to anyone about that yet, just a few days ago.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you being honest about that as well, because like you've mentored massive names who've achieved huge things. So it would be easy to just say, yeah, I'm really happy for them 100% and there's nothing else going on there. But you're very honest about that, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, I don't know if I've said that before, but it's the same with you though, Connor. Like, it's the same with you. We've had 6 conversations, maybe, I don't know, 8, since we worked together in this time. We've had a bit of chat over the years before, but I'm not responsible for, you've had exponential growth since we connected.
Since we connected in August, man, it's been it's been wild, man. Yeah. You have a skill. That's your superpower.
I do have skills, but you came in to use the Discord thing, which is about like focused work and being able to get you. And you're the one who took that most seriously. You bought that as a product and you wanted to use that, and you used that, and you started doing what you needed to do to move your business ahead. And now you've run an event, and now you've got another event coming up, and now you've got staff, and now you're a coach mentor as well. But I'm only just doing, I'm a squeeze of lime, like a little question mark of what about this, what about that. You're the one who decides if you do it or not, if it's a good suggestion or not. You have to do all the work with it. You have to live with the consequences if it wasn't a good decision. I shouldn't have gone to Montenegro. Now I've lost 10 clients, whatever. Like, it could have gone that way. It's the risk is all on your side, right? So, and I don't take responsibility for your success. Like, it's you've done it. You've been doing the work. I've had 8 conversations with you. We check in here and there, and that's the thing with coaching and mentoring is like you're opening up doors and ideas, but some people are going to forget that how they thought before, and some people are, maybe you didn't actually do anything for some people, and it really was some other thing that they did. It's always great. It's the same with working with rugby teams. Like, you don't know, were we going to win anyway? Would we have won anyway? Like, or is it the fact that we did all these things that are different? But yeah, it's beautiful to see the journey that you're on, brother. And I love, you have a strong spirit and a good soul, and like there's a deeper journey that's unfolding here. That's a really good one. And I appreciate you sharing the challenges that you've had with your family background and your own mind. And we all have these. I think it's learnable, and it's a skill to be able to find better within ourselves. And then we don't have to have that fear of, this thing's going to come and get me. It's like, no, it's like having a fear that you're not going to be able to catch the ball after you've caught 100,000 balls. It's like, no, there's no fear that I'm not going to be able to 3-ball juggle today because I just learned the skill. And you're learning the skill of being an excellent man and being able to put your brain into different states. And it doesn't mean it's always perfect. I'm not saying, I'm sure you have your times at the moment where you still doubt and you're still like.
100%. Yeah, definitely. Every day.
but yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
but you're not
but less
like,
than before, right?
yeah, the tone and the trend is towards something better, and it's not a risk. Like, men have the fear of like, oh, I might go back to how I was before, I might become an alcoholic again or whatever. No, you're a different man now. You have a different set of experiences, you have a different frame of reference, you've read different books, you have different conversations, you've got different places to go. You're never going back to who you were before, unless you really, really choose to. And it's going to be difficult for you to go back to where you were. That's the thing. It's like the bridge is kind of already burnt, brother. Like, sorry, but you can't be that person who you were before, even if you wanted to. And that's the truth for you now, Connor. I don't know if you're, hopefully that resonates as well, to know that like there's no chance that you're going on the path that you might have once thought that you were going to go down. And so, yeah, there's a lot within this conversation. I appreciate the chance to have it with you. I think there's 10 or 15 people might have caught bits of it live, and there might be another 100 people listen to it after, or maybe 1,000. But I love that we had the chance that you want to sit down and have this conversation. And I wish there were more conversations like this happening in the podcast arena of exploring things on a bit of a deeper level. And it's easy to get wrapped up in the skills and details of techniques, but when the underlying foundation changes, then everything changes. So, yeah, thank you so much for having
My
this
pleasure,
again.
man.
And look forward to the next one. Catch up in
for
Europe,
sure,
man.
man. Yeah.
We still haven't met face to face, right?
I know, yeah. I know you're pretty tied up now, obviously, but do you have any plans coming to Europe over the coming year?
Yeah, I've always got plans. I just tell everyone else them at the last minute. But yeah, we got this event in Mexico if you want to come over in 2 weeks. But no, we'll probably go to Switzerland and spend some time with Nico and solidify that connection and the next evolution of the online stuff after Mexico. So we'll probably be there in May or June, and yeah, we'll probably do something there as well. So you'll be one of the first invited if we run a little get together.
I'm there, man.
We'll likely be in Montenegro after that. So looking at putting dates up for that. So probably July, August, Montenegro, which is when it's scorching over there, which I love as well, that hot time of year.
Yeah.
We'll have to catch up this year. 2024 is the year.
Definitely, man. Yeah. Awesome, bro. Yeah, really appreciate you, mate, everything you've put together, and just very grateful to be a part of the community.
I'm looking forward to seeing the movement journey as well. Be vulnerable about the progression into that with the work with Niels. And,
yes.
I'll do the same. I'm working on some
another benefit as well with the community, is like we're just helping each other. So it's a mutually beneficial agreement, which is another net benefit of the network.
Yeah, Niels could definitely, he'd be very happy to get some support from you as well. So it's a great partnership.
Yeah.
Thank you, brother.
Awesome, man. Have a great day, all right?
You too. Have a good one.